I'm Carol Myers.
And I'm Wenzel Jones.
With NewsWrap, a summary of some of the news in or affecting LGBTQ communities around the world for the week ending February 22nd, 2020. The lives of LGBTQ people in Indonesia have gotten worse. The leaked draft of a new family resilience law would require anyone suffering from sexual deviations to turn themselves into a government rehab facility for treatment. The draconian bill outlaws urges to achieve sexual satisfaction through unusual and unreasonable ways. Among the penalties for noncompliance, anyone who fails to report to a rehab center can have their children taken away from them either temporarily or permanently. The same goes for family members who fail to report their queer relatives. The proposed legislation defines the roles of a father and mother within the home in specific terms. For example, married women would be required to take care of household-related matters and treat the husband and child well. The draft law also punishes people engaged in surrogacy with up to 7 years in prison. The case of Reynard Sinaga has added fuel to an already anti-queer atmosphere. As we've previously reported, Sinaga is an Indonesian studying in the UK who's been dubbed Britain's most prolific rapist. He's been convicted of drugging and victimizing more than 100 men in the Manchester area. Sensationalized coverage in his homeland focused more on Sinaga's homosexuality than on his horrific crimes.
Same-gender sex is technically not illegal in the world's most populous Muslim-majority nation, except in Aceh, the semi-autonomous Indonesian province governed under strict Islamic law. Still, a number of high-profile government and religious leaders have stoked the flames of homophobia with vitriolic rhetoric. Some have even called for virtual genocide to rid the country of LGBTQ people entirely. Human rights groups and queer advocacy organizations have been quick to condemn the bill. It set social media afire, mostly with negative comments. Amnesty International calls it a very patriarchal bill that will set back progress in gender equality and women's rights protection. The bill reportedly has the backing of all 4 Indonesian political parties. Soduk Mujahid is one lawmaker who defends the bill. He told Compass.com that homosexuality disrupts the future of mankind. However, passage of the bill requires the backing of President Joko Widodo, and he has yet to comment on it.
Students in Vietnam are being taught that same-gender attraction is a disease or mental illness that can be cured. This according to a report issued on Valentine's Day by Human Rights Watch. It seems to contradict what appeared to have been the Southeast Asian country's slow progress on queer rights. Starting in 2015, the government allowed transgender people who have undergone gender reassignment surgery to register as their correct gender, and Vietnam voted in favor of establishing an LGBTQ rights watchdog at the United Nations in 2016. But homosexual orientation remains taboo in much of Vietnamese society. And Human Rights Watch found plenty of testimony from school administrators, teachers, and students to back that up. Young people said that they frequently heard both teachers and family members call same-gender attraction a mental illness or disease. LGBTQ point person for the rights group Graham Reed told The Guardian that an increasingly vibrant and visible queer rights movement in Vietnam has led to more awareness and social acceptance of sexual orientation and gender identity in recent years. But Reed said, the government's actions have so far not officially reflected these changes. No Ly Phong Linh of the Vietnamese human rights advocacy group ICS Center said that, we need stronger steps from the government to tackle discrimination and create a safe and inclusive education environment for our youth.
A transgender woman made history at the United Nations. Aisha Mughal of Pakistan's Ministry of Human Rights became the first trans person to be part of a national delegation to the global body's meeting on violence against women. However, Mughal was not the first trans person to participate in discussions at the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. There have been a few from non-governmental organizations, but Mughal was the first one to be part of a government delegation. She tweeted her appreciation and wrote that she wanted to acknowledge the efforts of my government for mainstreaming the transgender community of Pakistan. This latest advance in Pakistan comes on the heels of a major bill to offer transgender people free health care and to establish separate hospital wards to ensure that they get the best non-judgmental care. Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that his government is taking responsibility in response to a number of reports of harassment and outright denials of treatment for transgender people by hospital staff and even by other patients. Mughal said, "With all the support from the government, I feel proud to be a Pakistani transgender woman."
In the Mormon Church, however, gender is God-given and eternal. The newest edition of the General Handbook, Serving in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, expands on earlier pronouncements, replacing 2 earlier versions. Those are only available in print and only to faith leaders. The latest edition was posted online this week for all to see. The handbook describes gender as an essential characteristic of Heavenly Father's plan of happiness, and the intended meaning of gender is biological sex at birth. The lengthy section on transgender individuals counsels Mormons against elective medical or surgical intervention for the purpose of attempting to transition to the opposite gender of a person's birth sex. Any Mormon who adopts changes in dress, grooming, names, or pronouns intended to reflect a gender identity different from the one assigned at birth faces some serious church restrictions. Trans men will not be allowed to participate in the all-male ordained Mormon priesthood. Official church assignments or callings are limited, and trans people cannot gain full access to Mormon temples. Affirmation is a global organization of queer and queer-supportive Mormons. The group said in a press statement that, narrowly defining gender as the biological sex at birth negates the lived experiences of transgender individuals. According to the Salt Lake Tribune, the new handbook is now only available in English, but it will be translated into 51 languages.
Among the queer U.S. political stories this week, trailblazing married gay presidential contender Pete Buttigieg really does have a Nigerian prince, of sorts. A Nigerian man named Shinedu confessed to BuzzFeed News this week that he really is a fan of the former South Bend, Indiana mayor, and that he really is behind the mysterious Twitter account supporting him. Conspiracy theorists have been charging that the account is run by a Buttigieg campaign-controlled operative in the African nation. Both Mother Jones and Newsweek have also confirmed the man's identity, although he used only his first name because he's been hounded as a fraud or worse on social media. Shinedu said, "I just support Pete passionately. Many others outside the U.S. support Pete as well." All the abuse has led the Pete promoter to delete his Easy Shinedu account. He mostly blames supporters of rival candidate, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. That could also be a tricky issue. It was revealed this week that Russia is not only working to help re-elect Donald Trump in the upcoming elections. Vladimir Putin's minions have also been busy posing as rabid Bernie supporters on social media. The goal is perhaps to just disrupt the Democratic Party's primary election process. Or perhaps Putin and/or his paramour in the White House think that Sanders is the candidate Trump could most easily defeat, ironically by branding the Democratic Socialist candidate a communist. Meanwhile, Chasten Buttigieg responded to right-wing talk show flamethrower Rush Limbaugh's attacks on his husband during an ABC TV interview this week. It was itself something of a historic moment, since it was part of the network's series of interviews with the spouses of the leading presidential contenders. And, of course, the Buttigiegs are the first same-gender couple. As for the radio show Loudmouth's rant,
well, look, this isn't new. I dealt with a multitude of Rush Limbaughs when I was walking through the hallways of my high school. And you have to realize that LGBTQ Americans have to come out every single day. When somebody asks who we're married to, asks about our partner, or you feel like you want to share something about yourself, but then you have to second guess how that person's going to react if I say, well, my husband, instead of my wife. I've been dealing with the likes of Rush Limbaugh my entire life. What I'm actually worried about are the young people in this country who are watching the historic nature of this campaign, watching how people talk about it, watching how people react to it and treat it, and wondering if this country is actually a safe place for them to be.
That's Mayor Pete's hubby, Chasten Buttigieg.
Finally, let's catch up on the top quips by Democratic presidential contenders on the U.S. campaign trail. Elizabeth Warren's strong showing at the umpteenth and most watched so far televised candidates debate this week netted a reported $5 million in overnight campaign contributions. At a campaign stop in New Hampshire, Warren offered one of the best ever dismissals of a Republican official. asked if she whispered into her dog Bailey's ear about a running mate, who is going to be my Mike Pence, who will look at me with adoring eyes, Warren didn't miss a beat.
I already have a dog.
That's NewsWrap, global queer news with attitude for the week ending February 22nd, 2020. Follow the news in your area and around the world. An informed community is a strong community.
NewsWrap is written by Greg Gordon, edited by Lucia Chappelle, produced by Brian DeShazer, recorded at the studios of KPFK Los Angeles, and brought to you by you.
Help keep us in ears around the world at thiswayout.org, where you can also read the text of this newscast and much more.
And you can listen to NewsWrap each week by subscribing to our This Way Out Radio YouTube channel. For This Way Out, I'm Carol Myers.
And I'm Wenzel Jones.